I would try to enjoy the journey a little bit more. I really would, especially with the homeschooling. Like I said, it wasn't my preference. I really felt, even at the time, that it was a sacrifice. I didn't enjoy it for what it was, just quality time with my child. you know, I thought, he needs me. This is what I'm going to do. I'm putting my career in the back burner. I was building a business, but it wasn't great, business at the time. It didn't really start doing well until very late,
Till
towards
he
the.
was in school
So yes,
and
exactly.
you could devote your focus to the business.
Right. It
Yeah.
didn't really start doing really good till then. So I would just enjoy the journey. You know, it's easier said than done, in the rearview mirror.
Welcome to Women and Work, the show where we take an inside look at how women are overcoming our own unique challenges as we grow our careers or build a business while nurturing relationships and family. I'm Diane Mocha, founder and CEO of MomSub, the childcare app that connects you to a substitute mom. And I want you to know that work can fit your life. Each week, we meet a woman who has done that. Today, I'm with Dr. Nelva Lee. She is the founder and CEO of Concrete Build Financing, a real estate backed cryptocurrency. She spent 20 years running a trade school that helps workers transform their bilingual ability into a medical career as a translator. She's a mom of 3 kids and an author of multiple books, and her career has spanned decades in healthcare, academia, entrepreneurship, and advocacy, with a focus on balancing work and family. Wow, that is a lot to balance. And I thank you for being here, Dr. Nelva Lee, to talk about that balance.
Thank you for having me, Diane.
I was looking up your background and I see your work has been focused on creating opportunities for women in industries where our voices are sometimes overlooked. So you want women to design their lives and workplaces with freedom and purpose. I love that when I read that. But of course, we know that women face incredible obstacles trying to do that. So I want to start out by asking you, what do you think has been the biggest challenge in your career, specifically because you are a woman?
So career-wise, I have to be honest with you, Diane. I have been very blessed in being able to have amazing positions. Like I said, my career has spanned, over 30 years in healthcare and academia. I've been very blessed in being able to get in the door, being able to get those positions. However, the challenges came from my personal side. So, like you mentioned, the whole balancing of, being a mother, being a wife. And so oftentimes I've had to step back from positions or, just not pursue certain roles because of that. And so I don't think there's such a thing as balance, really. It's really having to prioritize. So this might be a season where I'm not going to have to pursue, where I won't be able to pursue certain roles. But I've been very fortunate. Even in those seasons, I was able to start my own business. When I was homeschooling my oldest son, I started my own business. It was an online trade school, and I was able to run that while homeschooling him. So talk about trying to balance, right? But I've been, like I said, I've been very fortunate to not have too many roadblocks. I
Mhm.
can't really point to any specific roadblocks because of being a woman, but definitely the challenge of being trying to be a good mom and a good spouse has definitely played a part in how many roles I've pursued.
So it sounds like being a woman influenced your choices. So tell me about the career you were in, the job you had. Was it, good money? Was it giving you, a lot of satisfaction in your life that you left when you were homeschooling your son? How old was he? And was the decision to then start this business specifically because you wanted that control over your schedule and to be able to be around him?
So let me kind of let give you a little bit of a overview of my circumstance. My son now is 24, going on 25. He works as a civil engineer and graduated college with, did amazing. Got, he attended college on an academic scholarship. So kudos to everything that we went through to get him there. But he was on the spectrum and found that out very early on when he was a toddler. He was still in daycare at the time. And I had a very, very demanding job as a director of patient advocacy at Grady Health System at the time. So I had a toddler, but I also had a very demanding position. And I was, fast tracked to becoming vice president and maybe even president of that organization. But I had to make a decision. And that was okay, is career, fast tracking through that those ladders or making sure that my child was okay. Thankfully, I was working on my doctorate at the time when all of this was going on, and really saw the need because of my position at Grady Health System for an online interpreter training program because I had interpreters as part of my in one of my departments, and it was very difficult to find remote interpreting training for them. So it was a need in the industry, and I was able to meet that. And so the transition over between, being a director at a very high powered, healthcare position to running my own business was almost seamless. So I started the business prior to leaving Grady Health System, and it was able to just kind of pick up from there. But in retrospect, it was a blessing because of the fact that my son needed me, he needed his mom. Uh, and the fact that I was able to pour that much time and energy, not only into him, but also into the business because I was at home. And so it was a blessing in the end,
Mhm.
blessing in disguise.
And transitioning into a business that you already knew the industry, you created it because you saw the need. So you knew exactly who to contact and already had the relationships
Correct.
to build those bridges with people who would gladly pay you to solve their problem. And so
Exactly.
that's a beautiful thing that you didn't necessarily have to start from scratch and, feel like you had to birth a business. Although every business has its challenges, but
Yeah,
there's definitely a quicker on-ramp when you've already got the connections and you're serving a need for people you already know. So
exactly.
you could really give and take, like you said, prioritize on a daily, weekly basis, where you were focusing your time. And so you have three children. So
Correct.
at the time,
Just the
that
one.
you just had one at that time. Oh,
Correct.
okay.
Yes.
And so then two more came along while during the 20 years you were running that business. And
Correct.
so before then, how old was your son when you made that decision? And when you were in this high-powered position before you transitioned, what kind of childcare did you have, and how easy or difficult was it to find the right childcare?
That was always a challenge. Initially when he was, I believe I went back to work within 6 weeks of his birth. I think that was how short my maternity leave was. I was also a coordinator at the time at um, an agency, was a mental health agency. And so it was a again, very demanding position. So I went back to work and I was able to find a daycare, someone that did daycare out of their own home. And I did that for about a year. And so that worked out really good. So about a year I did that. And then I found different, learning center options that I always thought those were a little bit better than just your regular run of the mill daycares. And so the learning center that my son was at was phenomenal. They taught them, their letters and their letter sounds all before they were 2 years old. So they were, I mean, while they were, learning to speak. So it was really great. Position for him. But like I said, I found out very early on that he had Asperger's. He would always isolate himself from the others, didn't really like to play, had a lot of emotional stuff going on. And so really, that was one of the toughest decisions I made, really at the time. Because I was, like I said, fast track to moving up the ladder. But I felt that your children are only you only have them for 18 good years, right? So sometimes you have to make those sacrifices. But like I said, in the end, it worked out because I was able to focus my energies into my business.
Hmm. It sounds like a long time, 18 years, but I have grown kids like you. So, the days are long, but the years are short, as they
They
say.
go by very fast.
Yes. And so, if you have a desire to be with them, or you feel that there is a need, it's worth pursuing that and not saying I can't, right? There's
Right.
always a way. And you said, it was worth the sacrifice. Obviously, you sacrificed this career moving up and the potential income coming in from that, but there were other things you gained. I mean, I made a choice to go part-time and to
Mhm.
be 2 days a week so I could design the kind of motherhood that I wanted of being the Girl Scout leader and the soccer
Yes.
coach and the room mom and all that. And I was very hands-on, with my kids and helping them to achieve. And, my goal was for them to get academic scholarships, which they did.
Good.
And so I felt like I wasn't sacrificing because I was doing what I wanted as a mom. You were doing what you wanted as a homeschool mom, although it was years later when I tried to re-enter and I realized that I was having trouble competing with women who had not taken off that time or had not had children and sort of losing out to them. And so I think I realized later some of the sacrifices, but you can't always have everything, right? That's why they say you can't really have it all at the same time, and
At the
and
same
it's
time.
about prioritizing and knowing what you wanted. So it sounds like your son was just entering the school system, 5, 6 years old when you made this decision, and then you homeschooled him his entire educational period through elementary,
So
junior high years, high school years.
I homeschooled him through fifth grade.
Okay.
So he was very advanced. And so by the time he started kindergarten, he was already reading at the second grade level. So I homeschooled him from two to three, all the way through. So initially kindergarten, then put him in a kindergarten private school, and realized that was a mistake because he was so advanced of the other kids. So I pulled him back out halfway through kindergarten. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to, homeschool him until he's able to go back into the school system, but younger, even though he was advanced. So I did that through fifth grade. And so he was probably like 2 years younger than most of the kids in his class when he went back into the school system. I
Ah, okay.
Trust me, for me, homeschooling was a sacrifice every single year. That was not what I had planned my life to look like at all. Okay.
I understand. No, I hear you. We're all different, and
Right.
I appreciate that. And did you have a partner in your life?
Yeah.
And was there ever any consideration to that person? Were you married? Did your husband say maybe I could homeschool him? How did that conversation go?
So my husband, very supportive of anything that I wanted to do. I don't think that he had any inkling about leaving his job. My so oftentimes it falls on us.
Sure. That wouldn't have happened if you
Right.
had suggested, why don't you stay home and homeschool him? That just wouldn't have
No,
been an option. No.
not
Okay.
an option. In fact, I almost had to convince him on a yearly basis why I was doing this. I knew my son needed it. I had come from the mental health arena. I had actually worked with Asperger's, children, on the spectrum, and so I knew that what type of environment he needed to thrive. It was just not my preference. My preference would have been find a really good private school, put him there, and everything would be fine. But for this particular child, he needed that one-on-one. And like I said, everything turned out great because now he's doing amazing as an adult. And even when he did go to private school in fifth grade, I was so concerned. I was concerned whether or not it was going to work at that time, and he did amazing. So he by then developmentally he was able to interact really well with the other kids. But my husband has always been my number one champion. I can honestly tell you, even though I had to kind of like plead my case, he would always come to if this is what you feel is the best thing to do, we'll do it. And now in retrospect, he definitely sees the wisdom in what we did for our son.
Hmm. So in fifth grade, he made that transition to the school that you felt would where he would be in a good place. You had
Mhm.
two other children by then, that point, I'm guessing.
I
Yes.
had my second son by then. He was an
Okay.
infant. So
Okay.
my children are 8 years apart. So that was another thing. By the time the second one
Ah.
came along, it became a little bit harder to homeschool him the way that I wanted to. Because the
And
way
run
that
a
I
business and take
right,
care of a baby.
exactly,
And
exactly,
your husband's off working,
exactly,
coming home
exactly.
saying, "Why is the house a mess?" What?
No, my house was never a mess, Diane. I'm sorry, that was not me.
Ah, wow.
Yes, I
Why?
have a whole system with that. I we pick up right after we mess anything up. So, but as far as taking care of an infant and the business and homeschooling, yeah, something had to give. So it was a really good time for my son to try out school again. He went to school, and then I stayed with the youngest for a couple of years until and once he was 3 years old, and I went back into work full time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, when did you have to look into childcare again? You know, for those first couple years when your older one was in school, you were still running your business.
Yes.
Were you doing it all without help? And then when you said you transitioned back to full time, you mean going back sort of to corporate, and then were you looking for childcare again? And when a third one came along, the same thing?
Pretty much, yeah. So for the younger one, when he was born, we put him in like a mom's day out type of thing, once or twice a week. That helped. And then once he was about a year old, he did half day at daycares. So it was never full time until he turned 3, and then he went to pre-K. So
Mhm. So you never had trouble with like waiting lists or not being able to get in programs that you wanted for your kids.
I did not.
That's
I
great.
did.
Yeah,
Yes.
I know that can be a challenge for a lot of people, depends on where they are. And so what was the career that you then transitioned to? Because I know you've done other things besides healthcare. You know, you got your degree, you got your doctorate, and you've been on boards, you've worked in government positions, or at least you know, on boards for governments. So how did that evolve, and what did that mean for the balance for the family?
Right. So I've always been, like I said, very fortunate when it comes to career. So I worked, in healthcare, even when I was working from home, between my business, that's when I was working also as an adjunct professor, and I taught healthcare administration courses. And then once the younger one went off to pre-K, I went back into the workforce as a nursing home administrator, and did that for about 5 years and then went back to focusing on the business full time.
Hmm. And so you're right now running for office. You've served in different positions. Why have you transitioned into that kind of a role? And is that where you're putting your full-time effort, or is that something on the side, you know, and you're focused on building up this new business in cryptocurrency?
Correct. So the cryptocurrency business is a partnership with my oldest. So that's really fun.
A
Yes, we do that
partnership with who?
with my oldest son. The
Really? Okay.
Yes, yes, he's very techy. Went to Georgia Tech, so that's a partnership with him, which is really fun to be in business with your child. Um, Throughout the years, I've always been on boards. I've always served on the various boards, in various roles. I was the first chair of the National Board of Certification for medical interpreters because of my involvement with my trade school. I've been on, the Bridge Wellness South board, Christian Women's, health, board. So all these different boards throughout the years that I was also, building my business and working from home. When I went back to work, um, as an administrator, nursing home administrator, the purpose of it was to fund the business, to have a little bit more extra income, to be able to not have to pay myself out of my business and let the kind of the business sort of like thrive on its own. And that worked. And then I was able to leave that after about 5 years and focus full time on the business. And so that, and it was able to thrive really well.
Tell me about your decision to be on boards. Did you have
Mhm.
people coming to you because they knew your connections and skills, and it was something where you had to think, okay, do I have the bandwidth to bring this in my life? What kind of commitment did you need for it? And, what do you gain from being on a board? What do you get out of it that draws you to it? And what do you think that you provide? Because a board is oftentimes kind of advisory, and sometimes it can feel like there's a lot of discussion, but are you really making impact?
It depends on the board. Some boards are very hands-on, and others you're literally just showing up to vote yay or nay. Depends on which ones. I have never found boards being on boards to be incredibly, um, work intensive,
Hmm.
right? And I've only served on one or two at a time. So I've been on a lot of different boards, but only one or two at a time. And I find them. I just basically go on boards that match my passions. So if something is some if an organization is something that I find that I'm passionate about, that I believe that I would bring some sort of additional expertise, especially being a woman of color. I always feel that I have a different voice. So many boards you'll have, excuse me, guys, but old white guys
Hmm.
that are out there, and there's certain a need. Let's just say there's a need for a different voice
Hmm.
on a lot of boards, and so I always find that I bring that different voice, and I'm pretty outspoken. Uh, so I find that I am heard on these boards, and that I do bring a different perspective that's very much needed.
Hmm.
But for the most part, if there's something of that board that I'm interested in, I will contact them, ask if they'd like me to be on the board, and usually the answer is yes. So I've never had an issue of getting on a board that I've been interested in.
Hmm. And how old are your children now? I know your oldest is out of college. What about the other two?
So the second one that I mentioned, he is 16, and then we adopted a little girl from Puerto Rico, um, going on 7 years now. So she came on board. She's 15, and so that was, that's a whole story, all of it. So, but we are believers, my husband and we felt very much a calling um, to adopt from the foster care system.
Wow.
Yes,
So this is a lot going on. For a lot of people, it would be too much, and we're all different in what
correct.
we can handle and what we want to do. But what are some um, tips or just sort of share why it's worked for you that you've kept your marriage together? You've raised these three kids. You have two teenagers, and I know a boy and a girl teenager. Ah, that's challenging. You're running a business. And then you still got these other things you're doing in the community, running for, school board or whatever it is. What is the magic? I know you said a little bit about like my house doesn't get, out of place, and I'm kind of, the opposite. I'm always so focused on so many things, I forget about kind of the chaos around me. Are you just enough of a drill sergeant that everything is in its place, or, do you say no to having, social events? What's your magic secret?
Give you a few. For starters, like I mentioned, my house really doesn't get to mess. I'm a bit of a neat freak, and my husband is as well. So that was helpful when we first got together. That I think that was one of the first things I looked around in his apartment. I was like, "Is he clean?" Because I am. I'm one of those people that cleans up as I go. So I don't have an overwhelming amount of mess. And then I also taught my kids very early on, you clean up after yourself. There's no dirt dishes left in the dish, put it directly into the dishwasher. My kids at 8, that was the deal was you start washing your clothes, you start doing your own laundry, and then you get an iPhone. So that was the trade-off. If you're old enough for an iPhone, you're old enough to do your own laundry. And I'm talking all of it, wash, dry, and fold, and so that's one less thing that I had to do. My husband and I share the load when it comes to cooking, and we do have a housekeeper that comes once or twice a month, depending on how bad the house, the toilets really, with boys that can be an issue. So I do have a housekeeper that comes in and does like the major stuff, the toilets and the vacuuming and all of that. But the house really is picked up, and so it's not really messy. That's on the housekeeping side. Like I said, my husband and I have a really true partnership. Whereas, at any moment's notice, if I need him to help with something, he does. He just does. I don't have one of those husbands that thinks that's women's work or anything like that. So that's helpful, I would say,
Hmm.
to have that partnership. Keeping the marriage together. One of my books, Stay and Fight, is all about marriage. That's probably been one of the most challenging things because I'm a career woman. He met me as a career woman. I was finishing up my master's when he met me, and probably was making more than him. I know for a fact that I was at the time. And so, that this is all he's known is someone that's a go-getter, and will, so he's never had to, feel threatened because this is who he met, you know, from the get-go. Um, but it's been challenging for me as a Christian woman to know when to let him lead or allow him to lead, and that's probably been the most challenging part of marriage for me. Um, but as far as balancing and juggling everything, I would say that I'm not addicted to social media. I think and I'm not really addicted to TV watching either. Anything that's a waste of time, I just don't really do a lot of. So a lot of time wasters really are just that. They take away from you being able to do more productive things. And so I love being productive. That's probably another thing of, little quirk of mine. So if I'm doing something that's going to lead to a, you know, better results, I'd love that. If I'm doing something that's not going to lead to results, I just don't take part in it. So, but I love to, so I'm not a robot, though, Diane. I love to read books. I love to run marathons. I just finished an ultra marathon this weekend.
Ooh.
So I would say that also exercising has been my secret to having more energy than the average person. So I take my fitness very seriously, eating well and exercising, and that definitely gives me energy to be able to handle the day a lot better and stress free.
I agree with you on that one. Yeah, I love bike riding and I try to ride every day. And
Yes.
in the Chicago area, there's some months of the year when I can't. And
Right.
so now I've been spending time in Arizona part of the winter so that I can continue to do my daily bike rides. And yes, the food that we put in our bodies has a lot to do with how we feel, our energy, and
Yeah.
all of that. It also helps the village that you have around you. Did you have any family around you, the kids' grandparents, your husband's siblings that helped? And did that make a difference? And there's a lot of talk now about it's for women to feel it's okay. Don't feel any guilt to pay for your village, to pay for a housekeeper. We provide a service where we help people find and manage childcare because nowadays, with all the ghosting that goes on, with people, trying to find somebody in their home, it can be very stressful and time consuming. And so, what are some of the things that you think you were able to build in your village, both through your connections, your friends, your family, your neighbors, and even, by recognizing the value of paying for services?
Got it. Well, definitely, I would recommend a housekeeper. They are worth their weight in gold. So even though I keep my house pretty tidy, The major stuff I leave to the housekeeper. So she does all the vacuuming, the toilets, cleaning, dusting and all of that. So, and they're just worth their weight in gold. I highly recommend getting a housekeeper. The second thing that you asked, as far as family members, yes, we've been very blessed to have family members close by. My husband's sisters, one in particular, helped a lot, and my mother also helped. Um, Not a whole lot, because I wanted to be the primary caregiver of my children, but they definitely were able to fill in the gaps, when my husband and I were not available. Um, I'm very much in support of having a village of friends, coworkers, family members, church, friends, whatever. We can't do this alone for sure. And it really is important to also be that for others.
Hmm. And you talked about the partnership that your husband has. He's obviously a big part of the village, obviously.
Yes,
And that
yes,
helps when he's ready to pick in and do whatever it takes, whether it's changing a diaper or, having the birds and the bees talk, I mean, is minor or is major. I wonder, are you both A-type personalities, or is he a little more chill and you're more the driven, motivated type?
yes. Definitely more the driven type, and he's very chill.
Hmm.
And some things, he's very A type, in others, and we just kind of, balance each other
Hmm. So tell me, when you think about all these things that you've been through and all that you've learned,
Mhm.
if you could go back to an earlier version of you, if you knew then what you know now, what's something that you would change?
I would try to enjoy the journey a little bit more. I really would, especially with the homeschooling. Like I said, it wasn't my preference. I really felt, even at the time, that it was a sacrifice. I didn't enjoy it for what it was, just quality time with my child. you know, I thought, he needs me. This is what I'm going to do. I'm putting my career in the back burner. I was building a business, but it wasn't great, business at the time. It didn't really start doing well until very late,
Till
towards
he
the.
was in school
So yes,
and
exactly.
you could devote your focus to the business.
Right. It
Yeah.
didn't really start doing really good till then. So I would just enjoy the journey. You know, it's easier said than done, in the rearview mirror. But I would tell a younger version of me, just relax. Everything's going to turn out just fine. You're going to be okay. Everyone's going to be fine.
You saw it more as an investment, a sacrifice, an obligation almost that you put on yourself, but you felt like I have to do this, because you didn't want to regret, like, look how things turned out. I should have done this. So
Exactly.
you took
That
the
is it.
steps that you wanted to take, but at the time, sometimes that feeling of, oh, I'm such a martyr, but this is what I'm supposed to do, it attracts, more of that, not victim mentality, but more of that mentality of, yeah, I'm waiting until that future me that's going to be more fulfilled. Instead of like,
Exactly.
wow, there's so many moms that would kill to be in my position to even have the choice to make to do
Right.
this and spend this time with your child. And you have
Yes.
those special moments that you'll always have, those
Yes.
memories and his gratitude, which I'm guessing he does have if he's working on a business with you, that you did take that time to be with him.
Yes. Yes.
And
We
you
really
have
have a really strong bond out of the three. So,
awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, that's right. You bonded in a way with him and saw the fruits of that. Yeah. And at a time when he really needed that. And you have your career now, besides the crypto business. And what are you running for? What's the position you're running for?
For Georgia Superintendent of Schools.
Okay. So that's a staff position or
No,
that's
ma'am.
an elected position?
It's an elected position statewide.
Okay.
And I have always had a desire to run for office. And so I do feel that now, with my kids being a little bit older, especially, very much don't need mom 24/7 anymore, that I'm able to do that. And so
Is that a paid position? So would that
it
be a
is.
full-time job?
It is a full-time
Oh,
position.
okay. So
Mhm.
you're running for your next potential role that you will dive in and do full time and
Correct.
will help support the family and will lead to your next step in your career.
Yes.
That's a big leap too, because you don't know how voters are going to vote, how things are going to go. When is the election?
So the primaries in May. So if any of your watchers or your listeners are in Georgia, please go to my website, drnelvalee.com.
Mhm.
And I would love to have their votes.
And what are you doing in the meantime? Is this your main focus? Is just garnering support, and building up this campaign?
So I still work, like I said, as a nursing home administrator. We also have business, concrete build financing, always lots of hats. Always have lots of hats.
Yes. Well, thanks for everything that you shared, and people can look you up on your website and find out more about you and your books. And I love all of the tips and insights that you gave us today to help others who are going through those periods in their life really appreciate the stage that they're in,
Yes.
and don't worry so much about what's coming and enjoy where you're at. It's a beautiful message here on Women in Work today. If you were inspired by today's story, we want you to remember to share it with a friend, leave a review, and subscribe to meet our next amazing guest. If you're struggling with childcare and want to learn more about how you can find and keep both trusted and reliable care, you can sign up for our free webinar at momsub.com/webinar. That's momsub like a substitute mom, or of course you can connect with momsub on our social media channels, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all of those. That's Mom Sub Like a Substitute Mom. And our mission for you is not just that you find the right childcare, it's that you discover what you want in life and have the space and room to pursue it with intensity, and then reach out for help when you need it so that you can fulfill your dreams. We want to reduce your stress, your guilt, and your self criticism so that you can increase your calm, confidence, and clarity along the way. Your career and your choices and your success are yours to define. So keep pushing boundaries and spreading your love and encouragement to other women who need it.